Okay, we're back, and in your textbook and on the internet, most of the time when they describe where do the electrons live, they do it in terms of rings. And so they say that surrounding the nucleus are going to be these rings that represent the orbits of the electrons, and then there's a certain number of electrons that live on the first ring, and then the second ring, and then the third ring. Well, there's a better way of doing it, and that is by thinking of the electrons as living in an atomic hotel. So this is my own device, so if you see this on the internet, then you know that they are stealing from me property rights there. So this is my atomic hotel, and we're going to assume that these electrons are like people, and they're going to live on different floors of this apartment building. So you notice that the apartment building has floors. It has a first floor, a second floor, a third floor, and a fourth floor. We're going to call these floors energy shells, because the electron, when it lives on this floor, has a certain amount of energy, and then if the electron lives on a higher floor, it turns out that it has more energy up here, and then more energy up here. So these are called energy shells. And if you take a chemistry course, there are these things that are called quantum numbers. And the quantum number for the energy shell is the letter N. So the first energy shell is N equals 1. Then the second floor is N equals 2. And then the third floor is N equals 3, and so forth. Don't worry about the N number. I just want you to know that you got these floors where the electrons live. Okay, then all apartment buildings have rooms on each of the different floors. So it's so the same thing is true for the atomic hotel, that on the first floor it has only one room. And then when you go to the second floor, it has 2 rooms. When you go to the third floor, it's got 3 rooms. And then when you go to the fourth floor, what do you think? It's going to have 4 rooms. Now, you might be wondering why. Well, I can't really explain this to you. It comes from a highly mathematical way of visualizing the atom called quantum mechanics. And so you would need to take some high-level math like calculus, and then take some, well, it's normally like your second or third physics class is where you get into this. But you would use calculus, and you could actually calculate where these electrons live. And so all of these numbers that I'm talking to you about are a result of quantum mechanics. So just bear with me and just take it at face value that this is where the electrons live. Okay, so the first kind of room where the electrons live is going to be called the S subshell. So the energy shells were the floors, and then each of the floors is subdivided into rooms, which we're going to call sub-energy shells. And so the first one is given the letter S. So the S stands for a room that can hold 2 electrons. Okay, now let's go to the second floor, and you see it's got 2 rooms. Now notice that one of those rooms holds 2 electrons. So it's identical to the one on the first floor, so we call it the 2s orbital. So it's on the second floor, so it's a 2, and then the room is called an s orbital, so it's a 2s. So like, for example, in an apartment building, you might live in apartment 308. So what does that mean? You're on the 3 means you're on the 3rd floor. So similarly, if we say it's the 3s orbital, that means it's on the energy level 3. It's on the 3rd floor. Okay, then notice it's got another room that holds 6 electrons. Now you're saying, why 6? Because, okay, it comes out of that quantum mechanics thing. So again, take some higher level math and physics and you learn all about that. But it turns out that that room can only hold 6 electrons. Now, if you go to the 3rd floor, it's got 3 rooms. So it's got an S, it's got a P, and then the 3rd room is going to be called a D sub-energy shell, and it holds 10 electrons. And then when you go to the 4th floor, you've got 4 rooms, and that 4th room can hold 14 electrons. Now the beauty of going through all of this is we can get by here in geology by just knowing about the S's and the P's. That's it. So if you understand that an S can hold 2 and a P can hold 6, that's perfectly fine for anything that we're going to be doing in geology. So we don't need to worry about the D's and we don't need to be worrying about the F's. Okay? So now what we want to do is we're going to start with an empty hotel and we're going to take 1 electron and we're going to drop it into the hotel, and we want to know, where does that first electron live? And we're going to have 2 rules. Rule number 1 is that electrons try to go as low as possible. So like for example, if you take any object and you drop it onto a table, did you notice that it hit the table? It went as low as it could. But on the other hand, what about if you took that same object and you drop it so that it misses the table? Well, it keeps going further until it gets absolutely as low as it can get. So the electrons try to go to the first energy level first, if they possibly can. Okay, then the other rule that we're going to use is that electrons like to go into the s orbital before they go into the p orbital. And you can think about this as if you go off to school and you live in a dormitory or something like that, and you got a choice. You could either live with 1 roommate or you could live with 5 roommates. What would you rather do? You'd probably rather live with that 1 roommate so that you got more elbow room, right? So similarly, these electrons would rather be in an s orbital that only holds 2 electrons than be in a p that can hold 6 electrons. Okay, so let's try this. That we're now going to go back to here, and we're going to take 1 electron and we're going to drop it into the hotel. Where's it going to live? Well, it's going to go as low as possible, so it's going to go to the 1s orbital. So it's on floor number 1 and it's in the s orbital. That's hydrogen. So hydrogen has 1 electron and it lives on the 1s orbital. All right, now let's go to helium. So how many electrons does helium have? So get out your periodic table. Okay, what's its atomic number? 2. 2 protons, 2 electrons. So then we're going to take the electrons, we're going to drop them in. Where do they both go? The 1s, because how many electrons can an s orbital hold? 2. All right, now let's go to lithium. So find lithium. So lithium is Li, and it has an atomic number of 3. So it's got 3 electrons, and we're going to take those 3 electrons, we're going to drop them in. So 2 of them go where? Onto the first floor, but that third one can't go onto the first floor because it can only hold 2. So the third one goes up to the second floor, and now it's got a choice. Does it go into the S or does it go into the P? Because there's 2 rooms available. Well, we said that it prefers the S. So it's going to go into the 2s orbital. Now, I'm not going to continue with this, but you can find on the internet where they label where all of these different electrons go for all of the different elements in the periodic table. But that shows you how we start to fill in where the electrons live in particular atoms. Okay, now let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about fire doors and valence electrons.